On the campaign trail, the candidates for president remain locked in a close battle in key swing states. A recent Bloomberg News morning consult poll found Vice President Kamala Harris ahead, even if by a small margin, in Nevada, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. Former President Donald Trump looking to make up that ground, holding multiple rallies in Wisconsin and Michigan. And in just 2 days, the vice presidential candidates take center stage. J.D. Vance, Tim Walz will meet for a debate on Tuesday. And joining me now is political strategist and analyst Richard Gordon. Richard, good to see you again. Let's get right down to it. When you look at all the polling on a national level, it's a pretty split and even election. But of course, elections aren't national in this country. They're based on the swing states. And in those states, some show Trump ahead a little bit, or it's tied. New results came out on Friday from CNN showing that Harris is pulling ahead in that one single vote or single electoral vote Nebraska world, and North Carolina seems to be pulling together. What does she need to do, given that there's not going to be likely a second debate, to pull ahead if that's what she hopes to do?
Well, clearly that's what she hopes to do. Look, this is a very close election. Let's just remember something. Donald Trump historically underpolls, overperforms. So a dead heat means Trump's winning. What Vice President Harris needs to do is convince people that she is the commander-in-chief, that she has the ability and the skills to do it. She has a lot more room to grow than Donald Trump does. Everyone knows Donald Trump. Everyone knows Donald Trump. Not as many people know Kamala Harris or what she could accomplish. So for her, the goal is there will not be a major event, let's say, like a debate to change the thing. The course of the election. What she needs to do is show people and make them feel confident that she can be president, do a good job.
And the way she does that, of course, is through interviews. Now, she did this past week give an interview to MSNBC with Stephanie Ruhle, where she could focus in on business comments because she, of course, had just given a business-related speech. But she's still on friendly territory. Is it time for her to visit her friends at Fox and Newsmax?
I think she needs to. I think it's very important that she spread this out. I think she should talk to people who don't necessarily agree with her, because I think it's important for people who might not be comfortable with Donald Trump, and there are a lot of them. There are a lot of Republicans I speak with who are not comfortable with Trump, who want to be comfortable with the vice president, but need to see something else from her. And I think this is personality driven, much more than it is policy driven.
Well, and what that may be related to is there's a really historic gender gap in this race, with Trump polling much stronger with men, she much stronger with women. And of course, your mind has to go to, well, there's the abortion issue that's going to poll well with women. The economy should poll well with everybody, but maybe it's really a prime issue for men. How do you explain the gender gap? And is there any hope that she would have in closing that?
Well, the gender gap is fascinating because we've seen this over many elections now. Yes, abortion is part of it, but I think there's a growing difference in the way men and women in this country are looking at politics. And I think a lot of men, young men especially, like the bravado of Trump. It's not a policy thing. It is I like the toughness. I like how, he stands up for people. And they're not really looking at it from a substantive position. I think, again, she has room to grow in the 18 to 35, let's say, range for voters. And I think young men would be a place where she could, especially young people of color. One would think that she's doing great there. She is doing great there, but she's doing worse than Joe Biden is.
Exactly. And her tough issues, of course, the border and the economy. Let me ask you about the border. At the end of the week, she visits the border, first time in a few years. You think that the Harris campaign generally knows they're never going to gain ground on that, because they didn't really do much with that until, for 3.5 years, until all of a sudden it became, well, Trump killed the bill that we would have passed at election time.
Right. Well, let's just be honest and let's be fair. One, she's not the czar of the border. That's just something someone made up. She had a very specific job to do on the border. But the Biden administration, I think they would admit to you that they did not do a very good job in dealing with this. This is a real problem for her, because most Americans, most Democrats, feel that the border and immigration and the migrant issue is a major problem. The best she can do on this is to try to neutralize it to some degree, to make people not focus on this and focus on other issues, because there really is no great answer. And to only say over and over again, Paul, what you just said, which is, look, we had this great bill, it would have solved the border, but he killed it. And look, he's killed this. He's against, the Fed rate cut. I mean, he's against things that are for the American people because he wants to do them.
If
So
people understand it. Of course, she gave an economic speech at Carnegie Mellon this week in Pittsburgh, and where she laid out, to me, several details of an economic plan. She's talked about many of them before, but I'm sort of amazed. I get lots of emails from our viewers and stuff and messages, and they're often saying, why do we get no details from her? We get no details, as though they're getting a lot of details from Trump. And I'm a little mixed on that. Is there a gender thing going on there, or are they right? Is she really not giving any details, but he does?
I find this so baffling. I am with you on this. There's a tremendous gender issue here in what people hear from men and people hear from women. If you put their positions side by side, on Harris's side of the paper, there'd be all these things. Now, are they fully fleshed out? Are they in depth? No.
Well, that's what white papers are for, and that's what websites are for. So she probably has to emphasize that. We have just a little time left, and I want to ask you about the vice presidential debate coming up this week, just a couple of days. Does it matter? And I don't know, will Walz do as well as Harris did? Will Vance surpass Trump?
Well, first of all, just to finish the other thing, I don't think Trump has laid out anything, and there is a gender gap, and people don't seem to care that he says nothing and care that she does. I don't understand that. On the vice presidential debate, I don't think realistically it is going to move the ball one way or the other. I don't think it will matter. I think both of them will do rather well. Walz is a very folksy, I know him very well, is a very folksy fellow. I think he'll come across really, really well. I think Vance will be much more strident because he is much more strident, and he'll deal with right-wing policy issues, which is where he is. I don't think it's going to affect the election all that much. I don't think there will be as clear a winner. Look, Harris destroyed Trump in the debate. No one's going to come out of this debate and see that. I think, excuse me, I think people are going to go into the debate knowing who won, because that's who they want to win. They'll come out with the same view.
Well, politics as usual. Strategist Richard Gordon, thank you so much for being with me. We'll talk again soon. Can't wait to talk to you after the debate happens as well. Thank you, my friend.
I look forward to it. It's a delight. Thanks, Paul.